name is Dmitry. Welcome to our weekly Fridays meetup or lunch and learn meetup. So you are welcome to take your tea or lunch, and we are learning, and in fact we just started a very important series of talks dedicated to developing packages, because really all of us are developing many codes, but how to make use of those codes, that's actually is the big challenge. And 2 weeks ago we have invited Joseph Stinciano from CFIA to help us to master the skill of writing our own packages from our own codes. And today we'll continue this effort, and I have to admit that I tried hard to over the last 2 weeks to build my first package using the instructions from Joe from 2 weeks, and I got stuck. So that's why I have this, and we'll be checking the quality of the sound. Yes, help! I need somebody help. Help! What? Help! Now I found that YouTube is smart enough to detect the video from Beatles, and it would remove it automatically. So I need to be talking at the same time or singing at the same time. Now I find I've changed my mind. I'd opened up the doors. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down. And you know what? By the end of the session, maybe I'll take this little instrument and maybe I'll play it as well. But it's really the topic of today's session. I do need help with my packages. All right. Okay, so we'll continue now. I will let. Actually, not yet. I will go now and share my screen, because as always, we will provide a little update on what's new. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So there was a discussion there at GCcollab for the best time for the lunch, for this lunch.
We can't see your screen.
Oh, you cannot see the screen. Okay, I'll try it again. So hopefully you can see it now. Yeah. So on GCcollab group, or on our usethis GCcollab group, we were trying to find the best time, and seems like maybe at close at noon is better for many people, because indeed from 11 to 12 it's prime time for many groups, organizations. So we may need to shift it to noon. Now, a few other things have happened in the last 2 weeks, actually. So one of them is the following. So we now have our usethis portal actually hosted on opencanada.github. And even more, I can tell you that I have already put there the COVID demo app, which we're trying to reuse to build packages. I just put it there. So in fact, you would go there and you would see the code which we have developed last year, which shows statistics for COVID. And it's always good to combine data science with something which is practical. And definitely we would like to know what is happening right now in Ottawa. So this is what is happening in Ottawa right now for COVID, and we can add Ottawa on the Gatineau side here. So these codes were written a while ago, and on my screen you would see where we would keep those codes. Remember, we have developed the R4GC group, and many of us are the members of this group. So you are welcome to add your codes in whatever way you wish. For example, last week we talked about this directory, codes where we have now a collection of folders. And for example, one folder dedicated to COVID. And it's not organized. These are just some codes which we have developed in the past. So for example, this one which we used 2 weeks ago, and we're trying to make a package out of this code. But this code is actually exactly the one which is used for building this app. So now we're trying to build a package out of it. And as we discussed last time, normally you would have pieces of code which are generic, so which are not only for COVID, but for anything. And then there are, of course, codes specifically for, let's say, COVID. Now, we've talked about other projects which are of high interest to our community. So, for example, one of them relates to analysis of PSAS data, Public Service Employee Survey. So, and then another one for analyzing ATIP requests. So these are kind of, we call it non-raw data or not organized data. You know, you have something useful, just put it there. Now, we're moving to the next step of making something more organized. So my daughter is running around. Now we'll show you how we're trying to structure it now. So we have created a subgroup called GC packages. Now in GC packages right now, we are building 2 packages. So one of generic, what we call utility functions. So this will be utility functions which just are useful for any project. And this is already meant to become a package which any of us can use. And this is the one which currently doesn't compile on my side. And I asked my colleague and friend Joe to help us to understand what is wrong there. And we will go there. But essentially, you remember that last time we talked that in our folder, you need to create a file. A file, and this is the file which we built with you 2 weeks ago. It just shows one function and example on how you can use this function. And by the way, you see dontrun, and you know I have many questions about how to write your examples. Some of them don't run, some of them actually you can run, and even more, some of them you can put in tests folder, because that's very important. So you provide examples on how to use it and how to test your package. So now what I tried to do since 2 weeks ago, I tried to extend my package from one function to many more functions. So I have now this file which contains many more, actually not many, but 3 more functions. You know, for example, I find I would always start with defining packages which I need. So again, do we need a function for that or not? You know, then we have simple functions such as just like those shown here. Now we have I have a function to set options for different packages, right? And then I have the same function. You would see replace A with B, but also I have let's say another function called reset data table. And by the way, you would also see how I show the way where you can provide examples. The way I do it, I just write if false, so it doesn't actually, it is not executed when you run it, but it shows you examples on how to use the code. You see, I'm using it here. Now, all of you can go to this repository, and you can actually, download it. You can download it, or you can fork, and you can try to improve it. So now I will pass the mic and the screen to Joseph. But before doing that, I will just show you my screen on my actual machine, and you would see this is the same. This is the same package which I'm trying to build, and you would also I would like quickly to show you what is inside this package. So again, it's exactly the same repository which you have seen in GCcollab, but I will quickly guide you through the content of what is currently there. So first, of course, we already talked about R folder. This is where the codes which are meant to be used as a part of the package. Then we have tests, and this is where we will put some R codes to test those. Now we have a folder created vignettes where we will be adding documentation, and we've done it 2 weeks ago. Now, also, I created 2 folders, one called my codes and one called my datasets. These are not meant to be part of the package. Again, this is very important. It's just to help myself and yourself to, to collect anything useful and related to this project. And also here, I started building this 101. It's like packages 101. So you would see that it's R Markdown file. And essentially, I just document here everything I'm learning together with you, with the help of my colleague Joseph here. So, and then we can compile this file, and it will be like our help document, which will help us to go through different steps. So, and you would see the structure of this. So when I go to my file, you can still hear me. So if I go to my big file, it shows the structure, different structure of functions which I'd like to have there. So currently, if I try to compile, and normally how you do it, you go to build, and you would say, you can do it actually in here, or you can do it in here. You would say install, restart, clean, rebuild. So you do clean rebuild, and it tries to compile it. And essentially, it is not, it is showing that it needs R tools, but maybe it's not as important. But what is important is that it does not create a definition for my other files, for my other functions, and it produces some errors here. So this is where I would like to stop and pass mic to Joe. In here, in manual, you would see that only the documentation for hello function was created, which was the very first function in my R source file. No documentation has been created for my other functions. So, Joseph, I'm turning off my screen and giving mic to you.
Yeah, so in terms of building R packages, I'm not sure whether R tools is strictly required, because it looks like the library function still ran after you built the package. But because none of the functions were exported, we don't know if any of the functions are working for you after the build with all those warnings. So I'm going to share my screen and go over one of the things that you need to do if you're adding additional functions to a single file. So I'm going to start with just that original file that Dmitry had. So if we go through it, there's some documentation here. This is usually it's best to produce it with the R Oxygen package, because you can press Control, Alt, Shift, and R to automatically produce some of that documentation. And that works really well for a single function in one file. But with the way the documentation structure is, you need to specifically export each function separately. So if we look here, there's only one export piece of documentation, and there aren't any other export documentations throughout this file. Although actually there is one here. So I'm not sure why it's ignoring the second one, but it could be because there's a bunch of other functions without export documentation. So let me go over how I've restructured this file. And I'll go over some key components. So the first one is that before every function, if you have multiple functions in one file, you need these two lines. You need @rdname and @export. So what @rdname does is it specifies the name of the R documentation file that's relevant to these functions. So in general, what I like to do is make sure that it has the same name as the R file. So utils. I've called this utils. These are the utility functions. And so we've got this set packages function, and I'll go over why I made those changes later. For the next function, which is this new operator, this pasting operator, again, it has the identical set of information. So @rdname and @export. This is required for each function. And what this means is that all of these functions will be exported with the same documentation. I think if you wanted to, you could have a different R documentation name for each of the functions if you wanted to have all the functions in one file, but separate help files for each. I haven't experimented with that, so that might be something we can try. Yes.
John, a quick question here. So I have noted you renamed my original file IVI.dt into utils.R. So because I remember last time you said that utils is really just for functions which are not going to be called from outside of the package.
Yes. So I just changed it to that just to have a different file name because I had to rework the other file, but I can easily change that file name back if we want to go that way.
Good.
Yeah. It's not necessary for it to be named utils. It's just that's what I decided to go with this morning when I was reworking the file. So just to recap there, for every function, you need this RD name and export with it. And this is if you have multiple functions in a single file. If you only have one function in a single file, you can just use the automated key for setting up the R oxygen documentations. So again, that's Control, Shift, Alt, and R. Now, you might be tempted to put the variable information with each function, but with this particular setup, you want all of the variables, so these @param values, to be at the top. So these cover all of the functions below. And then you'll notice with the set packages function, initially there were some library calls in here. It's not recommended that you make library calls within a function in R. So the way that you get around that is you have these @import statements here for each function that's involved. Now, I know, Dmitry, you mentioned that the lubridate package has to be called after data.table. And is that because of the functions that are masked between the two? Dmitry? Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there was a connection was lost for a couple of minutes.
So you'd said that lubridate needs to be called after data.table, correct?
That's right.
And is that because, so I just was experimenting here with the packages. Is that because it has these functions with the same name?
That's right.
Okay, so one of the ways around it when writing R packages and writing functions is that you can specifically call the R package that you want. So in this case, for this data.table function here, if there's another package, say that we're loading that also has a function called data.table, the way we get around that is we write the package name and then the double colon. And so that makes sure that the appropriate functions are being called from the appropriate packages. So that's one way you can get around the masking of packages.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, so it's not a big deal really here. I guess the main challenge here is really how to deal with all those many functions in one file.
Yeah.
And by the way, in Rstudio, you can so there is a menu where you can just it's kind of a magic wand icon on where you can click and it creates a Roxygen skeleton.
Oh, it does? Okay. Is it?
So actually slightly it's lower. So if you, it's yeah, it's the one which is just where you see source on save, like you see the source on save.
Source on save.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I can perhaps just quickly.
Yeah, I'll let you share your screen.
I'll show you. Yeah, so that's the.
Oh, I see that one. Yep.
And in fact, so like for example, so you can just put your cursor on the line with the function definition, and you click here, insert Roxygen skeleton.
Okay.
Now you see it does not include this very important line, which is RD something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and just while I'm sharing my screen here, also a comment here that in our studio you can create your new project, and I was playing with that. Or actually, I will. Okay, just hold on. So I will. You can create your new package right from here. You can say new project, and you say create this new project. But I found it doesn't create the same way as you have shown us 2 weeks ago. And in fact, those remember there were some problems with the description file, so I will. So what I have done, I have two packages. One R Canada, which I created using your method, and then this package IVIM, which I made using the other method, which is going from file and a new project, create new package, and you found some problems there, because for example you've noted that in file in description, or not in description, in it was in file namespace.
Yes.
So it is automatically created file, and for package R Canada, which was created using your method, it is you will see it shows that it has been created automatically, a namespace, and it shows something like that, whereas this one shows something different, and I don't know where it comes from. So
yeah, so the way that you created the R Canada package using I think it's all from the DevTools functions and the usethis package. That makes sure that everything has the right format and can get updated automatically by those packages to make it easier, because writing the namespace by hand is particularly difficult because any errors in the namespace will cause the package to fail in some capacity.
Yeah, and in fact, you would see I have created this script package initialization script, which is yours. So this R Canada package is created exactly using this script. So anyone, by the way, can just go into our GCcode and find this file in this IVIM repository, and that's how we were building it 2 weeks ago. So I'll give the screen back to you, but what I wanted to show you here, that indeed you can use this. So that's how I insert the skeleton for Roxygen. Okay, so I'm giving the screen back to you.
Okay. So next, I want to address Dmitry's comment about the examples where it says don't run. So when I first submitted a package to CRAN, one of the comments I got back that I had to fix was regarding the examples. So for whatever reason, they accept this sort of strategy for the examples where it starts with don't run. Now, those examples actually do get run now during the R command check. I'm not entirely sure for this, like why it's written this way. But regardless of how you write it, the example will come up in the help file. So if we go, let's see, if we do, I think we might be able to just do library IVIM, and then I think we can do the DT place with AB. And when we pop that up, so we can now see the help file for all of those functions. So you can see it has each function in here, the different usages. Then it has the arguments, which some still need to be filled in. And it has a description of what it does. And then it has the examples here. And if you take these examples, you should be able to just place them in there, and they should all run without error. For whatever reason, the Magritter package didn't load, so that's something that needs to be solved. But the examples should run when you copy and paste them from the help file.
Now, I noted that indeed the help file was created for all the functions because specifically, I guess you've included this RD name. It's the same RD name utils. Yes. So that's why all of definitions for all those functions, how many, 3 or 4 of them, or maybe 5 of them, all of them were packed in one documentation file. Okay, that's very good.
Yep. So from there, if we look at the overall structure of the file folder, the my codes folder we want ignored. So if you want something to be ignored in an R package, the use this package. So it's use this is really helpful because then you can do use build ignore, and then you type in either the name of the file or the name of the folder. So I've already added it to the build ignore using this strategy, so we can see how it adds the name of the folder. So now when you go to build the R package, it will just ignore the folder because the folder is in the build and it doesn't fit one of the few folder types that R can handle. It will fail the build. And before, when I initially cloned this and forked it, the issue was that the notation wasn't correct for the folder. And so it was still recognizing the my codes folder and breaking down.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. So looks like this is the way we can now continue putting as many functions as we want. Now, let's say we have, I'll just show you. Can you just go to my code?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So in fact, I'll be using your screen because just go to my code and open there what I call utils master copy.
Utils master copy.
Yeah, because that's the file from which I will be taking functions, whatever I needed for my specific other packages. For example, for package Arcanda, which we're building at the same time, I will use maybe just 2 functions. You know, I don't need all those 50 functions. Right. But can you just open the table of content? This. So it will show you. Okay. So yeah, that's good. So you will see that this file it will keep growing. It will be huge potentially, and maybe I will split it in not just one file, but I will have a number of different files like EV base, EVDT, EV report, EV plot, linking. So essentially, because I will group them into separate files. And then for my R Canada package, for example, I need only one function, and I will just go and paste it, cut and paste it from there. So that's a strategy. So I think we talked about that 2 weeks ago, and I think this is essentially what you suggested, right? So what we could do.
Yeah, I think right now, because unless the package is going to be submitted to CRAN, and I don't know what the process would be like for us as public servants to submit an R package to CRAN. I don't know what sort of other background security needs to go in there, what sort of legal liabilities need to be stated in the package description. But if we're not submitting it to CRAN, then the thing that makes the most sense is to have a master file with the utilities that can then be transferred, like you said.
Yeah, okay. So now, but for this specific package, IVIM, these actually are the files which I would like to create. So right now you've seen only one file, which is EVDT, which has just a couple of those functions which you've successfully compiled. And you say it should not be a big deal. I will rename your utils.R file back into evdt.r. And the same way, I will create now all my other 4 files, like EV plot, for example, or EV report. So, and for each of those, I will use this RM, this Roxygen line, which will,
where did it go?
The
@rd name.
Yeah, that's right. So that was a missing sort of link for me, which prevented me from actually putting all those functions. Yeah, so this is very, very good, and I think we can now go to the next sort of step and building all those things. Now, let's just go quickly. Can you open a file packages101.rmd?
Yes.
I will be just using your screen and show everyone what we're trying to do there. So essentially, I'm putting there all the steps which Joy is describing, and today I will add more. So we can go quickly through the things which we discussed last time, and just by looking at the table of content, essentially. So if you click on setup, you will see essentially this is a recap of what we're doing. So in the beginning, you have your original folder with no specific structure, and then you would like to get a package. Now, can we talk more about examples? I think this is where myself also I have quite a challenge. So I've shown you how I build my examples myself when I develop my codes without packages. I just write if, false, and example on how I would use a function. Now, can you just click on provide example here? Just click on the table of content.
Oh yeah.
Table of content. Click. Yeah. So you would see. Actually, I started asking questions like sometimes you do it dontrun. Sometimes you just write your example the way it is. Do you know any difference? And secondly, second question is we understand that a big example, of course, is actually your test. So let's maybe spend the next the rest of this meeting today just showing how you build your test file. And again, what is the difference? Like, how should we be building our examples? Like simple examples, like in here in examples or dontrun, which are in the same R file, and then something more comprehensive as in tests folder.
Okay, yeah. So first, for the @examples, there's also another code that just says @example without the S. If you use that one, it will only work for one line. If you need more than one line for your example, you have to use the @examples. I haven't used anything outside of this don't run option for the examples, but I can experiment with that later and see what the other options are for running the examples and why you might want to use one over the other.
Okay. Can you show your example, which you have written yourself for those couple of functions?
Yeah, so I only wrote an example for one function. So it's the dt replace a with b.
Okay.
So with the examples, you need to set something up. So in this case, I'm setting up a simple data table, and then I'm replacing Alberta with its short form.
Yeah, now I found that it's actually not convenient to write it because it's no longer color sort of formatting is not, like you cannot really test it here.
Yes.
I guess normally what you do have your code elsewhere, and then you just cut and paste it from your other location into here, right?
Yeah, so an option would be to maintain an R file where you have your examples so they're color coded. And then what you do is you put that file in the R build ignore. So that way you can keep adding examples to it and it won't interfere with the package building process. And then you can just copy and paste the examples in. Alternatively, you might want to use the examples in a vignette. So you could have a vignette with all your examples and then just put them into the appropriate help file.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Now, can you show us your tests R file, which you also built for specifically for this function?
Yes, so let me first go through so in the file structure for the folder, you need to have a tests folder. If you use the test that package, it will automatically create the tests file and the test that R file. And then there's another package called test this, because you asked the difference between the two.
Yeah, so, that's right.
So test this, it has a function. Let me just see if I can remember what it is.
So yeah, with the R, there's so many. I think it's one of the, maybe it is listed as one of the disadvantages, I guess, of R. There are so many of those packages and functions that you can easily get confused eventually.
Yeah, so in general, test that works with test this. So test that will give you some of the stuff for creating the actual tests and getting those up to speed, while test this helps you actually generate the skeletons for the test. So there's this function called test skeleton from the test this package. And what that does is it will create an infrastructure. So it will create, in here, it created line 1, line 2, and line 12. And then I created the test in between. So what it does is it gives you sort of the basic expression that you need to put everything into to actually run your test.
Yeah, okay. So again, I guess the framework for building examples is like you have your own R file, which you will put as ignored file, and this is where you can write whatever you want. So all my examples, which normally I would have with if false, but they are good examples. Like they're really showing the, they could be quite lengthy sometimes, which maybe is not good enough for the short documentation. But then you can just cut and paste some portions from that other file into essentially two places here. One is where you are right now in this tests that file, and another one will go into definition, into this .r, into .far, like in here, right? So this is how you do it. So would that be correct to resume, like to recap what I've said?
Yes, yeah, that would be good. So in general, when you're writing your tests, you can write your example first, which should run and should function as needed, but you need more than just the example within your test because you need to check to make sure the function's behaving as expected. So you generally, for the tests, you want everything to be the minimum possible size because you want the tests to run quickly. If you have 100 tests in your package, they should still be running in under a minute anyways.
Okay.
So you need very simple examples in your tests to actually be able to fit your tests within the time frame that CRAN allows, because CRAN doesn't like it if your tests take too long to run because it's running on their servers, taking up time. So what I would generally recommend is you could have a more so you have a simple example in the help file, a more complicated example in the vignette, and if you can, an even simpler example in the test file.
Okay, wonderful. And even more, we can also have examples in vignettes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, Joe. So I think it does help me a lot. And I know you had a question for me also about why I love data table so much. And I'll just show you. I'll show you a little example. I will take screen from you, and I will show everyone just a small example on. Can you see my screen? So if this is for our Canada package, and here in COVID.R, I've shown example of using. Okay, in here. So let's say you've normally you've read a big file, huge file. And again, it doesn't have actually to be huge. It just mentality is very good. That what you do need to remove some data which is irrelevant. And with data table, you can say remove all these, essentially everything except columns 5 and 8. So it doesn't do any copying. So it just erases everything else. And you know, there could be many columns. There could be maybe 20 columns. And it does not do any copying back and forth like what you would do with dplyr. It actually just erases those columns which are not needed. So, and because you know you can do one way or the other, and as we say, every time, every minute, every person has a choice to make, a good choice or a bad choice. So why not to make a better choice, right? So, and then of course, this is just like a mentality. A mentality, you know why is good? Because, for example, even myself, I have hard time remembering whether it's called pool, select, or many other those English terms for many functions. Here, actually, there is no function. It's just in a bracket. So it's like SQL, they call it, a very basic definition of you have a 2D array and you say I, J, and by. So the mentality is very good. But also I found that in practically in no tutorials by Rstudio group, you will see a reference to data table. So, you know, they have many good tutorials, but really they somehow as if they exist separately from each other. And I found it's probably it's dommage, comme on dit en français. So it's better to actually use both of these. So in my codes, everything I do, I just, when I have a choice between the two, I always start with a data table. So again, this is, I say, the worst way of selecting data. Again, you can select by condition or select just as here. And it's a better case when you just work with memory. You respect your memory, you know, you respect that you should not be running codes just back and forth. And by reading more documentation about Python, comparing Python and let's say R, I found this was mentioned as one of the disadvantages of R. It's slow, it's clumsy, too much code. In fact, it's just one line, but instead of one line, sometimes you have to do multiple multiplications, running multiple functions, like 2 or 3 functions actually inside there, and you don't even know what is happening inside those functions. So that's my feedback on your question. And again, thank you very much. I thank you everyone for joining us, and I will now entertain you with my version of help, because help is what we need. And I can tell you, I would not be able to go anywhere without help of Joseph. When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone, I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind, I don't end up the dirt. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Would you please, please help me? But now my life has changed in oh so many ways. My independence seems to vanish in the haze. But every now and then I feel so insecure. I know that I just need you like I've never done before. Help me if you can, I'm feeling down, and I do appreciate you being around. Help me get my feet back on the ground. Would you please, please help me, help me, help me? So thank you very much, everyone. Joe, great help, and I'll see you everyone in a week from now.
All right. See you around.
Bye.